HQ presented by Capital One. We are going to take a look at the 4 teams in the NFC West and ask their biggest questions following the NFL draft and into the summer. We have a couple of guys who played for NFC West teams in their career. Robert Turbin won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks. Bryant McFadden, after winning a couple Super Bowls with the Steelers, played for the Arizona Cardinals, though they never crossed paths. B-Mac getting out right before Robert came in. But B-Mac, you see Robert in the hole. What are you doing?
Man, I'm going to shoot for the far leg, and hopefully I can get him down.
he escaped me, Chris. He was trying to avoid me. He knew what he was doing.
Oh, yeah. Guys, we're going to start right there with B-Mac's former team, the Arizona Cardinals, who drafted Marvin Harrison Jr. 4th overall. Bryant, I know that's right where you want to start.
Yeah, man, guys, man, my biggest question with the Arizona Cardinals, how long will it take Marvin Harrison Jr. to perform like wide receiver 1? Right now, he is the guy. He is the wide receiver 1 for their offense, primarily because they were lacking a lot of talent at that position. So when you invest in a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., arguably one of the more coveted wide receivers we've monitored throughout college football, I mean, he has to deliver. And sometimes we see young wide receivers, it takes time. But how long will it take Marvin Harrison Jr. to perform like a wide receiver 1 for their offense? Because that was a glaring need for their team. And for Kyler Murray to get ready to evolve to be a more consistent quarterback, a guy that can lead this team to more victories, be relevant in their conference, they're going to have to learn and be able to throw the football. And I think throwing to number 18 is the best thing to do for their offense because he is that guy. He is the guy. So that's my biggest question. When you talk about this team, drafted him 4th overall, some people feel like he was the best player, non-quarterback player available. That's just how talented he is. But how long will it take for him to perform like that, like the wide receiver 1 they expect him to be?
That's a great point, B-Mac, and you're going to love this because you're a defensive player, and I know you're out there on the outside, playing corner, and you're worried about the wide receivers, but I'm in the trenches with the big dogs in the front 7, and so my concern for the Arizona Cardinals is actually on the defensive side of the football within their front 7. They really didn't do anything to address that in the draft outside of getting Darius Robinson, an edge rusher. They did, they got a couple corners. They signed a couple corners in free agency. They did get another edge rusher towards the end of the draft in Xavier Thomas, but they were one of the worst teams in stopping the run last season. And usually when you have struggles stopping the run, well, it's because the middle of your defense, all right, is not stout. And so for me, I understand they got some offensive firepower. All right, they did some upgrading as far as the DB area is concerned defensively, but in the interior, didn't address that in the draft. I think there's still more moves to be made potentially for the Arizona Cardinals to address being better overall on defense, but particularly in that run game.
All right, let's hit Robert's former team. You see all the Seattle stuff behind him. We're going to the Seahawks, new coaching staff there, a defensive-minded head coach in Mike McDonald, who was the DC in Baltimore. But Robert, you're looking over to the new offensive coach in Ryan Grubb, who was great in the college game in Seattle with Washington, but how does he project at the next level?
Yeah, my biggest question mark for the Seattle Seahawks is offensively. Can Ryan Grubb, who's the new offensive coordinator now, can his elite play calling ability translate over to the NFL level? We've seen some coaches have success. Cliff Kingsbury will get that opportunity in Washington as an offensive coordinator. But over the course of several years now, we've seen this Seattle Seahawks offense with a lot of big-name players who are excellent guys in this league, Tyler Lockett's, the DK Metcalfs of the world, but seemingly seem stagnant, all right, for the better parts of the season. We've seen them be inconsistent offensively, all right, throughout the course of the season, over the course of the last several seasons. So can Ryan Grubb come in and instill his offense, all right, the way that he sees things and get some consistency out of his quarterback and the rest of that unit on offense?
Well, you just let me into my big question for the Seahawks. You talked about Ryan Grubb getting consistency from Gino Smith. That's my biggest question mark. Can Gino Smith get back to being the Gino Smith that we all raved about in 2022? Now, I'm not saying that Gino didn't play good football in 2023, but the 2022 Gino that we watched was outstanding, the best season in his career. Go back to 2022. He completed 69% of his passes. He threw for over 4,200 yards. Robert, you know, of course, 30 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Kind of had some decline in numbers in 2023. Completed 64% of his passes, threw for around 3,600 yards, only 20 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Gino when it comes to protecting the football. But for this team to get to where they would like to go, especially with a new head coach, some new personnel that they've added, it starts and it stops with Gino Smith. If Gino can get back to that 2022 type of production, this is a team that will have legit playoff aspirations. And we know one thing about playoffs in the National Football League, anytime you get into the tournament, anything can happen. But you just got to find a way to solidify a seat. So that's my biggest glaring question for Seattle. I love everything about their team, but all of their success, I'm not going to say all of their success, but the majority of their success is all about Gino Smith.
Still good enough to be a Pro Bowler last season. Gino Smith, two-time Pro Bowler. That's the same number of Pro Bowls that Matthew Stafford has with the LA Rams. But the biggest loss, B-Mac, on that side of things is obviously on defense. And it might be the biggest loss that any team suffered this entire offseason.
Yeah, any team. You talk about losing a guy that does not play the quarterback position and is it's a big hole that you have to find a way to fill. That's Aaron Donald. So my biggest question for the Los Angeles Rams, a team that I believe is a playoff-worthy team, once again, can Kobe Turner, who will be in year 2, and Braden Fisk, who will be a rookie, hold down the front for this team? Because they will be without Aaron Donald. This is the first time in Sean McVay's coaching career in the National Football League. He won't have number 99 to lean on defensively to go make a play when they need to go play. We saw some real good things from Kobe Turner a year ago as a rookie. Had 9 sacks, but he had the luxury of playing alongside 99, who commanded a lot of attention that allowed Kobe Turner to have one-on-one opportunities, and he cashed in. So you bring in Braden Fisk. They traded up for him early in the second round. This is a team that was really high on Fisk. Can these two guys coexist to be disruptors in the front, in the interior for their defense? Because their defense is starts and stops in the trenches. If they ball out, the second and third level guys will have an opportunity to do the same.
Great points, B-Mac.
Good point.
My question mark for the Rams is on the offensive side of the football. Matthew Stafford, 36 years old, took this league by surprise a little bit last season by making the playoffs. But now, can these young guys elevate their game enough to be in championship contention? Because when you have a quarterback like Matthew Stafford at 36 years old, all right, on the back half of his career, it's not just about making the playoffs anymore. It's about being able to contend in those championship games and ultimately getting yourself to a Super Bowl. So my biggest question mark for the Rams is, have they done enough in the draft and free agency now to be able to boost their team, all right, to be in championship contention and really contend with the Chiefs of the world, the Bengals of the world, and the other elite teams in the NFL?
And a team in their own division, the San Francisco 49ers, who have come oh so close from winning Super Bowl championships the last 5 years, last year in particular with Brock Purdy. This is a really good roster, Turbo, but there are more worries here than you might think, and some of them are off the field.
Yeah, obviously there's contract talks happening with Brandon Ayuk. There's been trade talks with Brandon Ayuk and both Debo Samuel as well. And my biggest question mark for the 49ers is, as we get closer to training camp, and B-Mac, you know this because you've been around guys who've held out, things of that nature, will this become a distraction as they're preparing for the 2024 season? All right, when guys are in contract talks, what do, B-Mac? They hold out. They don't show up to practice, right? And usually we don't see a lot of that happening right now during OTAs. But when it comes to training camp and things get more physical, all right, practices are more physical and draining and longer than what they are right now, guys are not going to go out there and put anything to chance as it pertains to injuries and things of that nature. So will this sort of disrupt the chemistry, all right, that the 49ers have developed so greatly over the course of the last few seasons because of these contract talks and the unsureties as it pertains to who's going to get traded and when?
And with that being said, that's my big question for San Francisco. You talked about the chemistry they've had the luxury of leaning on, Robert, over the last few seasons. Will there be any offensive changes to the personnel before the start of the season? When you look at this team, we saw the graphic early on. They have the best odds, I think, Chris, it was to get to the Super Bowl over the Kansas City Chiefs because this is a talented roster. But as Robert mentioned, in regards to some contract situations, problems for some of their players, we've been hearing guys, with their name tied to the word trade, potentially being traded away from the organization. As you stated, Robert, the Brandon Ayuks of the world and Deebo Samuel, these are two big-time contributors to what they do offensively. So what happens if they decide to move on from one of those guys? How will it affect the chemistry that they've had for such a long time on their offense? So that is a glaring question for me. It's a big-time concern because I do believe they have a championship-like roster right now as we see it today. But what happens if they decide, because the business, it makes more sense from the business side of things to move on and get some draft assets back into the building because contractually speaking, they can't afford to keep everyone.
Bryant McFadden and Robert Turbin asking the questions in the NFC West as we move through each and every division here in the NFL post-draft. 49ers are the heavy favorites in the division, minus 210 to win it with a win total of 11.5. Rams the next highest at 8.5. But look out for the Cardinals. If you believe Pete Prisco, he thinks that the Cardinals could be a playoff contender this year.